Hey, welcome back to the channel. First things first, I cleaned up a little bit, which makes me feel a lot better. I kept like searching for things, like where did I put it, and then I would have to like move things to see, is it under there? Anyway, cleaned up and all set there. So, oh, by the way, while I'm at it, this is the oil that you use for half VW. It's a VR1, so it's important for that engine that the oil have zinc in it. So 20W50 VR1, just in case you're curious. That's the oil that's in there. I have it on my list that right now there's only 1 quart of oil in there because, you know, I had a drip that was happening, and so I took both quarts out, and then I put 1 quart back in to test the leak, and it's all good. But anyway, so after all of this fabric work over the last couple of videos, I decided I needed to switch gears for a few minutes, and so I did. All right, so here's what I'm up to. First thing I was working on was making sure that my magneto switch was wired correctly. And I don't know why I scratched my head on this for a long time, but it really comes down to something simple. And by the way, I intend to separate these wires here. They're just cinders to the cylinder head and exhaust temp, so I may not. I mean, I don't know if that really makes a difference being tied to a ignition wire or not. I suppose it could still somehow transmit noise. So, but anyway, on to what we're talking about. To make this as simple as possible, which it took me a while to get there, all you're doing is you're taking this P-lead connection here and you're just grounding it to the body of the magneto, and that shuts it off. So it's really that simple. Is the switch is just in the middle of that. So this ground here that I have on top of the engine, this runs back to my negative bus here in the front. And so what I have is the wire comes, it's this white wire underneath here. The wire comes off of the P lead, it goes to the switch, and then the other side of the switch goes over and to this ground. So when I flip the switch, now my switch is upside down compared to all the other switches, because on the magneto, of course, when you have contact, when the switch is in the on position, that's when the magneto's off, because you're actually connecting that P lead to ground. When it's open, that's when it's on. So it's designed that way so that if you happen to lose ground, if it went the other way around and you lost ground, you would lose your engine. In this case, it doesn't matter. You could lose your ground and the engine's still going to be running because it's running based on being open, not being closed. So my switch is upside down. On is actually on the bottom and off is on the top. So when I flip the switch up, the switch is in the off position, but that puts the magneto in the on position. So I hope you followed that. It took me a while to get there in my head, but it's all good. And when I get the prop on, you know, we'll run a little test just to make sure that it's working properly. We're getting spark when it's in the right position, and we're not getting spark when it's in the other right position, the off position. So I wanted to jump to a couple of other things. One being, I'm working on the throttle cable, and so I've got my cover off so you can see the arrangement here. This is the connection for the wire. The wire, when it comes through, we're using this cable. Using this cable with a solid wire, and what I had to do is I had to make some pieces. If you've followed me for a while, you know how I am about putting wood screws into the structure. I don't like to do it, so I will add a little piece of structure to put the screws into. So here is my cable stop basically for for the housing. It's just at a bicycle shop was like $3, and which for this little piece of aluminum, not the bracket, but just this, is kind of crazy. But but speaking of crazy, the first time I covered my Minimax a long time ago, my 103, I used what was then called Aircraft Finishing Systems, the very same thing as Stewart Systems. They bought AFS. The glue was $32 a quart. When I bought the glue for what I have left, of like about a quarter of that bottle over there, it was $60 some. I looked yesterday because I need another bottle. It's now $80. So I guess this doesn't surprise me that much. But anyway, this is all sealed up around, and what I'll end up doing is, once I get the cable connected, I'll run the cable through here. I will figure out exactly where I want this to mount on the side here, and then I will clean the surface, apply some epoxy, and then I'll probably just use some blue tape to hold it in place while it dries, and that'll take care of the cable stop, the cable housing stop on this side. And then I needed to do the same thing on the other side, so I made this one. Whoops. So I made this one for that side, and since it's a little bit taller, it just needed to be a little more. I needed a little more structure to it so that it's stronger, doesn't flex, things like that. So so this one will actually go. It'll get mounted right there. So you can see where the cable is going to come out of the firewall and into that housing, and then the wire will then go forward to the throttle, which is right here. So, and it's the same kind of connector on this end. It'll go through that connector. We'll want to have that screw on the top side, of course, but like so. And then we'll tighten that up, put the set screw in once we get that positioned exactly where we want it. Right now it moves because it's just rotating on the, I've got it positioned like where I want it on the shaft. It's just, that's the throttle stop. So you set the idle, obviously, with this screw. That's the throttle stop. So it'll be somewhere about there, and then somewhere about there probably, and that'll be full travel front and back into our housing here. Let's hope. What I'm looking at right there is I set this so that it's about level, but it's really not. Now that I look at it from here, you know what? Let's just run the wire through and see where the wire ends up. All right, 1 second. All right, so I'm actually too tall. I must have measured something incorrectly, because I am definitely too high by. I'll have to measure that. Grab something to measure that with. All right, so that works out that I'm actually an inch too tall, which I measured something wrong. And obviously, if this is an inch too tall, there's a good chance that my hole in the firewall is also a little bit too high, and that's going to have to come down a little bit. So I will modify this by lowering this, and then we'll try this again. All right. Okay, so the second hole actually worked out really good, and the bracket is right where it needs to be now. So all I have to do is just get the paint off of this area where it's going to be. I'll make like a pencil mark, and then I can just epoxy that. Just let it sit right there where it's going to be, and get that epoxied in place. And then I'm arranging. I have to get one of them fixed so that I can push the cable up against it and figure out what the length needs to be, because the cable's going to come up, and what I want to do is I want to meet the choke cable kind of straight. I'm going to end up shortening the choke cable. I was kind of waiting until I got the throttle cable in. They're going to kind of connect right about in the middle there, and I'll do like this. I'll attach a little square block, and that'll allow me to put a clamp there, just like the little square block I have right there with the clamp, and the one I have up here that you can't see. But anyway, I'm gonna get, I was trying to decide if I want to epoxy this one or that one. I think I'm gonna do that one first, and then I can just come in here and easily figure out where my cable needs to be and get the other stop in. Well, I can get the stop in. You know what? Yeah. There's no reason why I just can't epoxy both of them in. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get them. Well, maybe not, because I'm gonna have a little bit of a bend in the cable, so I'm gonna have to wait until I get one fixed and solid before I can actually push up against the other one. It's just a matter of which one do I do first, and then so I think I'm gonna actually do the one in here first. This will be easier. So, and all I'll need for that is just the cable and the housing. I just need to get I need to make sure I'm straight in line with this. It's going to be right in here somewhere, right about there, I believe. But I'll just use a piece of this wire and get that centered where I want it, and then we'll be all set. I'll get this one in place, and once this one's dry and fixed, then I can push my cable where I want it and figure out what length it needs to be. Actually, I'll be able to then epoxy this one in place, and then I'll be able to figure out what length I need it to be. I'll start out long and shorten it until I get it ending up kind of bending in the right location where I want it to. So I hope I didn't just confuse the heck out of you. But anyway, so the next step is I'll rough up the area on the inside here and scrape off some of the urethane and get that ready to epoxy in place. And then once that's done, we'll come in here and we'll do the same for this one. And then we can figure out what length this needs to be to go between the two stops. And I'll also prepare a block for where those two cables are going to actually clamp together. I just temporarily have the choke one's just temporarily placed here, and but we'll deal with the length of that after we get this one in place. So nice, clean, straightforward installation. Nothing complicated, easy to access, which is the beauty of this whole operation. Everything is just out here in the open. So from an inspection standpoint, it's really kind of beautiful. You know, I'll just put some torque seal on everything once I get it tight, and then which is why you don't see any on the carburetor yet, because I haven't tightened those bolts. I have it in my list that those have not been tightened, so I didn't know if I was going to have to take it off again or not. So yeah, okay, I'll get some stuff together and keep moving forward on this. All right, so what I'm doing here is I'm getting this positioned, because one of the things I want to make sure is that, you know, I don't have any undue stress on my bracket. So what I'm just moving this back and forth and trying to see where the best, like if I go up a little, that's not too bad there. If I go up a little more and I tilt this sideways, that's not good. I'm getting a lot of scraping, so I actually have to come down when this is square. And that really seems like the best location right there. So I'm going to go with that. Make a couple lines here. None of those lines really help me all that much. I can't even see them. I'm gonna have to get my other pencil, which is actually right here. Do that again. There, I can see that line. So, okay, so rough up that area and get some epoxy, some blue tape. I'll just tape this in place, and then that'll get us all set there. So, yeah, and for this, putting these in place, let's see, my T88's right there, so yeah, that should be all set. I'll get that all prepped and epoxied in place with tape on it, and then I'll check back in with you. All right, so I got the epoxy on, and I've got that epoxied in place now, and I got it set where I get good smooth operation all the way through without moving anything, so I know that's right where we want it. And that blue tape will just hold it there until the epoxy sets, and then we'll have a good stop there that we can use to figure out our cable. Now I'm going to go make the block that I need, just one of these little square blocks here for up in there, and we'll get that block mounted where it's going to go, where we'll clamp these two cables together. This actually came with a second knob for a choke, but I didn't want to have my choke and my throttle next to each other, so that's why I went with a different choke setup here. So that's why I've got that different arrangement, that they're separated and I don't have to worry about hitting the choke when I'm trying to operate the throttle. So let's see here. I think I just pulled that out of there. Yeah, okay. All right, so on to making the little block, get that taped, epoxied in place, and then once this all sets, we'll be able to set the other one. And while I'm doing that, once I get that one set, then I'll be able to come back and shorten the cable on that. My trim will actually deal with that after we get our elevator back on. That cable's already in place, so we'll deal with that then. Okay, let me go make a block and scratch up an area in there where I want to put it, and then we'll go from there. All right. Okay, so I got that block. I went ahead and drilled it and put the screw in it. I hardened the threads with some thin CA, and then I put the screw in it again after that was dry. That way it's just easier to get that screw in position instead of trying to drill a pilot hole and all that after you're in there. So that's all set, and once that's dry and this is dry, then we'll be able to move on that. Now I had a question for myself the other day. I want to make sure that I wanted my left cylinder to be number 1 and my right cylinder to be number 2. I guess that's just kind of how I think, I guess, when I'm in the cockpit, left to right. So what I'm going to do is if I turn my system on right now, which I'll plug in my battery here, My life battery is right down here. Most of you have seen that before, with the XT60 connector on it. So I'll connect that. And then I'll get a battery for the camera because that's dying. I'll be right back. Okay, so what the plan is here is to turn them on, turn my master on, and what I want to do is I want to make sure that number one on the left here, right now it's reading my EGT and my CHT. It's saying the EGT is 73 degrees, 71 degrees, and it reads this temperature is whichever one is the highest. So, but 1 and 2 are both 69 on the CHTs, and now it's stabilized. 1 and 2 are the same on the EGTs. So I want to make sure that that cylinder is number 1 on my instrument. So I'm going to go and I'm going to take my heat gun and just apply a little heat to the EGT probe, and we'll see, hopefully, that number 1, it's going to flip to number 1 because that temperature is going to rise. Now you can see what's happening. I can't see yet. But hopefully we applied some temperature to number 1. We got that to rise, 77. So now the heat that I just applied is sort of spreading. So there, we're good. So now we'll check the CHT, and I'll just apply a little heat to the spark plug area where the CHT is, which is right here. And hopefully we get the same result. We get number 1 CHT rising, which we do. So I got them right. Number 1, number 2, and we're in good shape. Something I've been wanting to validate for a while, so now we're good. Both ones are elevated in temperature compared to number 2. Okay. On to the next thing. Okay, so I've got, I went ahead and put on these oil lines right here. That's where the oil circulates out of the engine around the intake, and then so it cools on the intake, and then it comes back around into the engine. So got those lines in place because as I was routing all of this, I just wanted to make sure I had good clearance around those. I'll end up bundling these once I get them set where they're gonna go, and I may pull that, then I'll probably pull this plug wire right here and just reroute it so it's under all these cables and not split by them like that. Let's see, I do have the tack. I don't have to worry about the tack too much. I've got the tack in a shielded cable here, so hopefully I don't get any radio noise. I'm certainly not connected to any kind of a ground plane. I'm mounted to wood, but as you know, my antenna is a true dipole out here in the wing. But anyway, everything's looking really good here. That epoxy is drying. We'll be able to cut this here to length once we get situated. I crawled in and I've made sure that when I get that positioned up here where it's going to go, it's not going to interfere with my rudder pedal at all. It'll be up here out of the way, so I won't have any feet problems there. And the other one, of course, is higher than that, so we don't have to worry about that one at all. Yeah. So I've been, I chose these particular fuel line clamps because I liked them the way they clamp around the whole thing. It's not like a regular hose clamp, which kind of has a flat area on it. But I haven't crimped anything. I just put them in here, and although I have a concern that getting those undone, should the need, or when the need arises to replace those hoses. Now I'm using a hose that will have a pretty long lifespan, but I don't know. My hoses are actually Tygon, so but I'm concerned about being able to undo that style of clamp while it's in that location that it's in. And I've got obviously one more forward that I have to go. I've got to go one more forward of there because it's going to go from my pump obviously out the firewall. And I'm not completely sure. See, that'll be over to the side. I gotta come out the corner. Yeah, I'm coming to right here on the side of the carb, so. But I'm not positive whether I'll be able to get to that clamp to undo it at all if I use this style clamp. If I could get a screwdriver in there, I will have a much better shot at that. I was gonna find these clamps real quick and show you. If you've been following for a while, you probably saw them before, but let me grab one real quick. So this is the style clamp that I'm using, because they make a really nice clamp, and the way that works is put your fuel hose on there. And then what you do is you take this and you actually are going to clamp by squeezing this part right here. And you just squeeze it until it's together. And then that's your clamp, and it does a really nice, you can see because they're right there, really nice circular clamping job, which is awesome. And then when it comes time to undo this, you actually have to pry this part here out. See if we can get to this. So you have to get under here, and this one isn't even really sharp enough to do that, but I'll see if I can't get it anyway. You have to get underneath this and pry that open. Once that's pried open, the clamp is released, and you can just easily pull everything apart. And then the clamp is spent, of course, but you know, maybe that's not as hard as I thought. I just might need maybe get a certain screwdriver that I have and sharpen it a little bit so I can easily get underneath there. And since the clamp is on there like that, I basically just have to rotate it so that I can get in there and pry this. I just have to make sure I don't put the clamp like that. If I do them all this way with these down, then I can rotate it and get underneath it. Yeah, I think I just talked myself into it. I think it's good, so I'm gonna go ahead and go with these. And yeah, so that's gonna be it for this video. I will catch you later. We're waiting on that epoxy to dry, so I'm gonna let that first one dry, and then I'm by the time that one dries, they were the same batch. The little square is going to be dry, and then I can get the clamp attached, holding the two cables, and then I can figure out exactly what the total length of those cables are, and I can get the second one epoxied up there in the engine compartment. So okay, yeah, thanks a lot. Hope you're enjoying these as I am, and I will catch you later.